Coming up, two of the league's best meet up in Kansas City and an AFC West showdown for Monday Night Football. This is Locked On Game to Game NFL.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game NFL, local experts taking you from game to game, previewing week 6 of the NFL season. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you so much for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. Our experts are here. They are ready to preview things for us in week 6. The Ravens are coming off a rare home win, and now they're looking to keep that momentum going against one of the surprise success stories this season in the New York Giants. Locked On Ravens breaks down what Baltimore needs to do to knock off Big Blue.
Stopping Saquon Barkley is the key for the Baltimore Ravens in their Week 6 matchup with the New York Giants. I'm Kevin Alshaker, the host over at Locked On Ravens. Baltimore's run defense has been somewhat leaky over the first 5 weeks of the season. They ranked 26th in yards per attempt given up on the ground. And Saquon Barkley is back for the Giants and a key part of that offense. So if they can limit Barkley's effectiveness on the ground, they can turn their attention to the Giants' 32nd ranked pass offense. It doesn't have many receivers out there, at least proven options at the moment. Daniel Jones has looked better than he has over the first couple years of his career, but still with a secondary filled with quality players such as Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, etc. If they can limit Barkley on the ground, I think their secondary will be able to feast with added opportunities on offense. It will be the Greg Roman versus Don Martindale showdown. It will be interesting to see how much Don Martindale decides to blitz Lamar Jackson. Jackson has been much improved against the blitz this season. So if he can slice and dice up that Giants defense, if they do decide to blitz, take the short stuff, and if the Baltimore Ravens can also push the ball down the field, it will be a recipe for success for the Ravens in Week 6. For more on the Ravens and their matchup with the Giants, be sure to follow the Locked On Ravens podcast and subscribe on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
The other New York football team has been a bit of a surprise this year as well, as they're 3-2 right now. Week 6 will not be easy, though. They're heading to Lambeau Field to take on Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Locked On Jets talks out the keys to victory for their team.
The New York Jets must protect Zach Wilson to beat the Green Bay Packers on Sunday. I'm John, the host of the Locked On Jets podcast, and the Jets are looking to extend their winning streak to 3 games in Lambeau Field, Week 6 against the Packers. They will be facing a talented pass rush comprised of Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark, and Preston Smith. However, the Jets' offensive line played well last Sunday in a win over the Miami Dolphins. It was a new alignment as veteran Dwayne Brown stepped into the lineup after missing the first 4 games with an injury. Elijah Vera Tucker, who's moved from guard to tackle, slid from left tackle to right tackle as Brown returned and played very well. This was the best group the Jets had on the offensive line all season. The line's been shuffled consistently due to injuries. If they hold up well and protect Zach Wilson, they'll have an excellent chance to pull an upset and improve their record to 4-2. For more on the New York Jets, tune into the Locked On Jets podcast every Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, free and available on all platforms. Your team every day.
The AFC West looks like it's going to continue to beat up on itself as the Chargers host the Broncos on Monday Night Football this week. Locked On Chargers details what needs to happen for LA to get a win.
If the Chargers want to pull off a big win on Monday Night Football, they have to keep Russ and the Broncos offense down. This is Daniel Wade from a Locked On Chargers, and it's going to be huge for the Chargers this week to try to get their defense back on track, and they get a Broncos team who literally scored 9 points in 5 quarters the last time they took the field. The Broncos offense has been reeling, but they do still have some weapons like Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, but you cannot let Russell Wilson click in this game. The Chargers have let some bad quarterbacks get into a rhythm, including giving up 90 points the last 3 games to the Jaguars, the Houston Texans, and the Cleveland Browns. The Chargers defense is not going to strike any fear in anyone's heart, but maybe this is the get-right game. Maybe you see a bounce-back game from J.C. Jackson, their prized off-season corner they brought in free agency, and maybe the Chargers' run defense starts to click. Now they're going up against a team who already lost their best running back for the season. But for the full game breakdown and everything Chargers-related, make sure to follow the Locked On Chargers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, free and available wherever you get your podcasts from. Your team every day.
The top 2 teams in the AFC are prepared to face off on Sunday. This is Locked On Game to Game NFL. Today's edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every potential new hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you want to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. I know I've personally found a couple different jobs through LinkedIn. It's really easy to apply, and you can see all of my credentials right there when I apply, so you can see if I'm qualified or not right away. It's great for businesses. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find that qualified candidate you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Welcome back to Locked On Game to Game NFL. I'm Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. The Bills and Chiefs are undoubtedly two of the best teams in the AFC. They have the two best quarterbacks in the AFC. Sunday's matchup is going to serve as a measuring stick for both teams. Locked On Bills thinks that this may all come down to Buffalo's defense.
Von Miller has to show up and make a big impact for the Buffalo Bills to beat the Chiefs on Sunday. I'm Joe Marino, host of the Locked On Bills podcast. Both teams are 4-1. These are the two best teams in the league. These are the two best quarterbacks in the league. There's a lot on the line Sunday afternoon. But the X factor, the biggest difference for the Bills this year compared to the recent games against Kansas City is now Buffalo has a true elite pass rusher. The Bills got pressure on Mahomes last year in the playoffs. They just couldn't get him down. That's why the Bills went out and signed Von Miller. That's why they invested in a compression-style pass rusher like Greg Rousseau in the first round. That's why they've drafted in the second round recently A.J. Epinesa and Boogie Basham. The Bills have told us they have to do more to affect Patrick Mahomes and get him on the ground. So the biggest storyline to me is how does all of that show up on Sunday? We're going to find out. For more on your Buffalo Bills, be sure to check out the Locked On Bills podcast every Monday through Friday, free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Dolphins will have their work cut out for them as they play host to the Minnesota Vikings in Week 6. Locked On Dolphins talks through what it's going to take to get a win with rookie QB Skylar Thompson at the helm.
If the Miami Dolphins want to secure a win in Week 6, they're going to have success building on their progress in the running game. This is Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins. Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel stated on Wednesday that 7th-round rookie quarterback Skylar Thompson would take the field as the team's starting quarterback in Week 6 against the Vikings, regardless of the status of both quarterbacks Tua Tagovailoa and Teddy Bridgewater. Both Bridgewater and Tagovailoa are in concussion protocol, only returning to the field this week, leaving Thompson as the only quarterback on the active roster for the team to begin game planning with at the beginning of the week. But Raheem Mostert at running back had his first 100-yard rushing performance of the season against the New York Jets, and the Dolphins are looking to build upon that as a team that was largely expected to find their identity on the ground this season. That has not happened, but Mostert and the Dolphins offense took a step in the right direction in Week 5.
All right, the Steelers have looked like nothing short of a hot mess so far this season. It likely is not going to get much better against Tom Brady and the Bucs this week. Locked On Steelers tells us how Pittsburgh can pull off the upset, though.
I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast, and these are your keys to the week as the Pittsburgh Steelers get ready to take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this Sunday, 1 p.m. at Acrisure Stadium. While the Buccaneers are 3-2 and not overly impressive this year, they still have a lot of talent on their roster. For the Steelers to pull off this upset, they're going to need to key in on some matchup opportunities that their roster does allow them to have. For the Steelers defense versus the Buccaneers offense, I look right at the Steelers defensive front. They have been getting after the quarterback, but now is the time. Tom Brady is not the mobile quarterback that you've been facing with Josh Allen, so you need to be able to get him down. The key to that, attack the right parts of this offensive line. You've seen a lot of struggle from certain guys in the offensive line, like left tackle Donovan Smith and left guard Luka Godecke. These are two guys that you have to be able to take advantage of this week. I think the Steelers need to be working on things all week long, whether it's Carl Dunbar, the defensive line coach, Terrell Austin, the defensive coordinator, Mike Tomlin, anybody. They need to find ways, get Cam Hayward matched up with that, with that side of the line. Get Alex Highsmith matched up with that side of the line. Find ways for those guys to get good one-on-one opportunities against those guys to create pressure moments where you can get after Tom Brady, maybe force some turnovers, or at least get some sacks to push him back and waste some drives. Defensively, the Buccaneers are one of the best defenses in the NFL. They rank 6th going into the week in scoring, and you're going to need to find ways to work against them. And honestly, it might not be about time of possession as much as about finding a way to hit your shot plays, but they got to choose when those right shots are. Kenny Pickett needs to be able to go after Carlton Davis in this one. He's been the cornerback that's been picked on the most by the Buccaneers, but they have to find a way to get shot plays. No Steelers wide receiver has scored a touchdown yet this season. That has to change this week if they want to win.
The Jags and the Colts both need a win to stay relevant in the AFC South at this point in the season. Locked On Jags is preaching patience for the fan base and the players on the field.
I'm Tony Wiggins with Locked On Jaguars, and here are the Jacksonville Jaguars' keys to victory as they go to Indianapolis to play the Colts. They have to be patient, namely Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence needs to get back to checking for his checkdowns, not trying to force the ball into deep coverage. Just be patient and take what the defense gives him, because what he has to do is cut down on his turnovers. In their last 2 games, both losses, Trevor Lawrence has a total of 7 turnovers. The only turnovers the Jaguars have had during that span. You cannot continue to turn the ball over at 3.5 turnovers per game if the Jaguars hope to change their fortune and get a victory with the Colts. Check me out on Locked On Jaguars podcast every single day, where it's your team every day.
That's all for today on Locked On Game to Game NFL. Thank you so much for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. Make sure you go and subscribe to Locked On NFL on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcasts from. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.